All right, hello everybody. This is Hilary Stupa. I am a developer with Qdabra software. I hope everybody is having a great summer so far. Ours has started out a little bit slowly. It's been not as summer-like as I like to have it, but hopefully that will be changing soon. Of course, I know I'm going to go directly from not warm enough to heat and drought, but I hope summer's treating everyone well. Um, so today what I want to talk to you about is a technique for faster paging in SharePoint dashboards specifically. Because we do want dashboards where we can filter and we want dashboards where we can page, and we do not want to have to deal with delays, or we should say our users do not want to have to deal with delays or lag. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you a quick demo of a not great dashboard, a really not great dashboard, and a much better dashboard. And then we'll talk through the technique behind it. I'll include those samples with the webinar packet. I have an extra little bonus item today that I'll be sharing with you towards the end of the webinar. And then I'll have all this packaged up for you. We'll have time for questions as well. So obviously, like I said, what we would like is to have fast dashboards with filtering options and no lag on paging. Now, if you attended last week, you would have seen Jimmy's cool technique, or I think Caro demoed it, the cool technique for doing sorted filtered drop downs without any performance issues. And I've leveraged that in my good dashboard over here. But to start with, I have this dashboard. It's not very great. It's okay. Right now, it's returning 100 rows from its data source. So I think this is something as form developers we can all speak to, is this thing that we do where we develop something. It's very cool. It works very well. And about a year or 2 years, or depending on how heavily it is used, 3 months in, all of a sudden we have users telling us our beautiful, wonderful thing is slow. It's pokey, it's hard to use, and they have to wait forever to do anything in our form. This dashboard right now has 100 rows of data drawn back to it. I've got paging in place. I'm only showing 10 rows at a time, so you can see there's 10 pages of data. I don't have any Q rules in here. I have to pull back all of my data because I need all of the options in my statuses and my locations and my titles and my other filter fields, right? Because in order to have all the options available to the user in the filter, you will have already had to get all the data. So I haven't done anything to sort these. I don't want to requery the data 4 times, so I can sort it differently for each one of my dropdowns. And right now, if I select a filter, this is not bad with 100 rows. And you guys know, looking at the names here, everybody here knows that my paging and my filtering is involving conditional formatting on these rows. So I can page, I can filter. It's not super duper. It's not terrible. It's the sort of situation I think we often find ourselves in when we have created something new and it doesn't have a ton of data behind it. We're like, oh, that's not bad. That's tolerable. Okay, so now our users have been using this for a while and they've been adding more and more data. Now my data source has 700 rows in it. So I've pulled back all the data from my list. You can see that I've got 70 pages of data here. I'm doing show hide conditional formatting on these 700 rows to only show 10 of them right here and to filter them. So I'm going to click a filter, and you are going to just trust me that this actually has the filters applied, because as we wait, nothing seems to be happening. The same situation is true in this dashboard with paging. Eventually it does page. Oh, look, it's unresponsive. We'll go ahead and wait because we are made of patience here, just like our users are. So as you can see, now that we're at 700 rows, our performance is really pretty problematic, right? Your users aren't going to like that. You're not going to like that. So here I've got the same data set being pulled back. And I've got 700 rows from my original data source. Here's my filtered rows there. I'm using that cool trick from last week's webinar to take my data that came back, and I'm filtering it. I'm making it unique using XSLT, and then I'm sorting it. And now you can see even with 700 rows, how much faster this dashboard is now. It feels almost instantaneous. And the same is true for paging. You know, I click the page button and here I am on page 2. I did not click the page button on Worst Dashboard because it is just so bad. So I guess I don't have anything that matches this particular set of filters. So here are my 3 versions of this dashboard. So what did I do to make this better? And that's the interesting question. And this came from a real customer scenario as well. And that's kind of where we tend to find these interesting things. So the first thing I did was I created a secondary XML data source that matches my current data source structure. And then I'm copying just a page at a time into the XML data source based on filters or paging. I had to rebind my repeating table to the secondary data source. And then what happens is as the user filters or pages, the XML data source is only going to hold the relevant options, the relevant information. So it keeps the displayed data source small. I don't have a ton of conditional formatting on my repeating table itself, which allows the form to render a lot more quickly. So if I go back to my good form, of which I am so proud, you know, the thing that's letting this re-render so quickly is I'm paging 10 rows, and the data source behind this repeating table, it just has 10 rows in it right now. When I select a filter like Apple, then the 4 times 10, however many rows of Apple data there are, gets copied over just this one page at a time. And so as I page through and I click that page button, my second page of results get copied to my XML data source. So at no time am I hiding things in this repeating table based on this filter or based on the page. And that's what speeds it up, is this actual process of copying the page at a time data is faster than it is to have all these formatting rules on our form to show and hide things. And this is especially true in the case of a form that's using the SharePoint REST API for its data source. Don't know if you've used that much, but the schema created from that is really complex. It's kind of deeply nested, and you know, there's groups and groups, and the data's down a few groups, and those become extremely sluggish. So the first thing we have to do is create an XML data source that we will use to hold just our page data. Now, I use the QRules get XML command for this. Get XML and then the DS name of your, I always forget how PowerPoint works. The XML with the DS name of your original data source. And then I just copy the XML from the result node. So looking here at my, I think I actually have this open in Notepad. Looking here at my XML data source, what I did in my case, because I'm using a REST query, is I set my REST query to return just one row, so that when I copied this, I had a single entry. Then I added another entry tag here so that InfoPath on creating the schema for this would recognize that entry was repeating. So that way you don't have to actually, you know, have an XML. You don't want your XML file to have 8,000 rows in it. That's all I'm telling you. Just make sure it just has a couple items in it so that you can create this data source connection. So in my form here, and I have to move my meeting control stuff because that's in the way. In my form here, here's my original data connection. So this is my list data. It's pulling back the 700 rows. And here is my list data page. So this is my XML that I created. You can, if you are industrious, you can go ahead and empty out all this data. I don't bother because I know I'm going to be deleting it. And I don't really care if there's some defaults in there. So now you've got your XML file and you've created a secondary data connection for that. So the next thing we need to do is we need to copy this page at a time data over. So anytime the user clicks the page button, you've probably, if you've got paging set up, you're probably already doing something. And anytime they click the filter button, you're probably already doing something, right? Especially if you're using paging. So these are the places you'll want to use your delete command to remove existing data from your XML data source. Then we use the copy command to set the XML data source to the current page. And you can use the QRules set value command to indicate the results you want for your page at a time data. So again, I already had paging set up on my dashboard. So over here on Paginate, I've added a couple of new rules and I've changed a few things. First off, I am using this category field in my original data source as an indicator of what data I want to keep, what data I need, what is the result pool I need, what is the data for a specific page, what is the data for a specific filter. I'm not using this field for anything. I don't know that anybody's using that field for anything, so it's an easy one to repurpose. So in my paging logic on Paginate, the first thing I'm doing is I'm setting that to blank because it's easy. You can do that with this kind of basic info path rule. You can set something to blank. It sets all instances when you're outside the repeating group. The next thing I'm doing is I am setting my category field to X if it's something that should be included. I already pasted that rule over here so it's a little easier to read. So you can see that we have inside our XPath filter, we're basically checking, does the title match my filter title or is my filter title blank? And does the status match my filter status or is my filter status blank? Okay, so that's the only tricky part. You do have to add that, but you would have had that in your bad dashboard anyway. You would have had that sort of thing here for hiding your page results, right? Or hiding your title and so forth. So it would have already existed. It's just a matter of you're only doing it one time here. And the reason I'm doing this here is just because it's easier than having these filters multiple places. So we use set value, we set that value to X. Now the page length is normal, row count. This time, instead of just counting the entries that match on a specific XPath filter that has all this filtering stuff in there, I'm just counting it if the category equals X, right? So I've got this helper field. It says, I want this result. And now for my row count for my page, if I count everything where category equals X, then I'm in business, okay? Next, if we continue down this list of rules, we've got reset paging, that was still there. Page number equals 1, that was still there. Those are original rules. Here's the last set of new rules. So this one is only running if we have a single page of data. My other rule for setting up my page at a time data is over here on page number. If there's multiple pages, this logic has to rerun when the user changes pages, right? So we've got two different scenarios, single page, multiple page. So in the case of a single page of data, I go and I delete everything in my list data page, and then I copy everything over that has a category of X and is in the right position, right? Position is greater than or equal to 1, and not position is greater than the page end. So this gets me everything that's within my page range and copies it over. So that's for a single page. Multiple paging, I'm doing that here. The two new rules I added here that are different from our paging logic XTP is clearing the page data, and then here, setting the page data. In this case, I did, in the one case, I did it in one rule set. Over here, I did it in two. I can't tell you why. It's just one of those things. It doesn't make a big difference. So basically, I'm saying we want the position to be greater than or equal to page start, and not to have the position be greater than page end. And then in that case, we would like to copy that data over to our single page. So all we're doing here is on this paging logic on Paginate, if it's a single page, we copy all the data over into our XML data source that we're using here for our page at a time data. And over here, if the page number changes, we're copying just the data for this page over to our XML data source. Okay, so we're just deleting and copying data, and we're simply doing it on the pagination logic because that's where it makes sense in this case. My filters were already set up to repaginate, which they were set to do in my bad dashboard as well. So over here, you can see we were repaginating on all of that. In my bad slow dashboard, you can see I've got hide previous, hide next. These are rules to hide the previous and next page, as well as some additional filtering around these guys, right? So I had all of this logic in place just for making sure only the right rows showed. Over here, I no longer need all of that logic, right? I went ahead and just added a shade alternate rows to be snazzy. So because we only have one page at a time, we can get rid of all of that formatting. So all in all, actually making those changes doesn't take terribly long. It's just a matter of going through and adding that XML data source, adding a few additional rules to your paging logic to make sure that you are copying over the right page of data, a little testing, and you're pretty well done. Then you have to rebind your repeating table. Now, in one case, the case of the client where we came across this, I got really lucky and was able to just change this in the view files. I literally just changed the name of the data connection in the view file. For some reason, for this demo form, that didn't work. I don't know why. It was a mystery to me as well. But the way I approached it here was I simply made a copy of the table, rebound the copy, and then referred back to my original table to do things like set up my column width and so forth. And again, you guys have all had to do rework in InfoPath before. It takes a few minutes, maybe 15, right? And then it's over. It always seems like it's going to be worse than it actually is because you've got a sample, right? And then you kind of delete your original table. And in the end, with the page at a time approach, you all of a sudden have, this snappy paging, snappy filtering. You've got all your data pulled back because you need all your data for your filters anyway. And you're using a REST. You can use a REST data source without kind of the REST penalty that we sometimes see because of the super complicated REST schema, right? Where here's the stuff that we actually want in our repeating table. It's all the way down. Here's entry. It's all the way down in content and then in properties. Hopefully, this approach will be helpful to someone. It also will work with SharePoint list data. So if your data source is a SharePoint list, that's fine. Or other types of data where you can't paginate. So if you're not able to get back paginated results from your data source and leverage that, this will work in those scenarios where you just get back your data and copy over one page at a time, because it isn't the data load in the form that's necessarily making things slow. It's the conditional formatting. It's all those formatting rules that's slowing things down, which is why my worst dashboard is so very bad. So I have one more, and I'm going to include that good dashboard for you. I'll include the bad one too, so you guys can kind of take a look at that and see what sorts of things were changed between the two in case this is useful for you. And of course, if this is something you want to apply to a form and you need a hand, please reach out to me because I'm happy to help you. I was super excited when this technique fixed our client's issue. I was like really pleased that this worked as well as it did, and I was super happy about how fast the paging and filtering was. So if you have a form that you think could benefit from this, I do want you to reach out because I think it's a great way to kind of speed things up. Darn, PowerPoint and I are still fighting. Okay, so I've got one more thing to show you, and I'm going to include this form too. This is a sample custom Q rules command that Jimmy put together for another client the other day. And it's just sort of the thing that seems super useful. And I wanted to include it with the webinar package. Basically, it's a form that has a little JavaScript file in it. That JavaScript has a custom Q rules command. If you haven't worked with custom Q rules commands or built them, Jimmy added this great framework to Forms Viewer that allows you to create custom Q rules commands with JavaScript. So there's a good sample of that in this form. And this one will basically, if you hit enter, give you a button click. So if I were to type in new and hit enter, it's going to give me the same result, which is a message box pop-up, super exciting. It's going to give me the same result as if I click the button. And it will let you, if you have places in your forms where you know your users are clicking enter and they would like to have a button click happen, it gives you the opportunity to add that sort of functionality. The form itself is, it's just a simple sample form. It has a resource file with the JavaScript in it that you can export and take a look at so you can see how it works. In the Qdabra rules data source on finished loading here, where did manage rules go? There it is. You can load the script. You just use your load resources command, and then you set up the triggers for the script. And there's instructions here on that as well. So hopefully that will also be useful to you. And I'll include all of that in the webinar package. Does anybody have any questions either about the dashboard changes or about that little sample form from Jimmy? All right. Well, you guys, I can see the names in the attendees, and every one of you knows how to reach me, right? And so, drop me an email if you do have any questions or if something comes up afterwards, and you're like, oh, I sure wish I knew how to do X, Y, Z, and I'm happy to help. And again, if this is something you'd like to try on a form, let me know, and I'm happy to help you with that. I think everybody on this call is using Qdabra forms. If you're not using Qdabra forms, look into it. We definitely are going to help you take your InfoPath form investment along with you so you don't have to rewrite everything from scratch, which I don't think any of us have the time or the energy to do, at least not me. And Forms Designer is out now. It's beautiful. Oh my gosh, it's lovely. I cannot wait to be free entirely of InfoPath. So thanks for coming. I'll pack all this stuff up and send you guys an email and get you the webinar packet. And again, reach out if there's anything we can help you with, and reach out if you have any ideas for other webinars. And do have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day. Thanks for coming.